All right. So let's close this out by talking about some news that is hot off the press,
Oh,
and
Jesus.
that is the impending fight in April, which is your man Errol Spence against Keith. One time, sometimes I'm in the ring, Thurman.
Well, to be clear, this is still rumor. To be clear, this is still rumor, right? This
Yeah,
isn't
it's
being
still
reported
rumor.
by any of the outlets. This is something that Mike Coppinger, who some
Really?
people, depending on what side of the fence you lie on, if you team Crawford or team Spence, you might say Coppinger's full of shit. So it's not officially, it's not announced, right? This is rumors, but sounds
Well,
plausible.
I mean, it hasn't been officially announced, but if you, well, yeah. So this is on ESPN, on their website, and it is Mike Coppinger, but it says that Errol Spence and Keith Thurman are finalizing a deal for a PBC on pay-per-view fight that is expected to take place in April. Sources told ESPN. Spence holds 3 of the major 4 titles at welterweight, but this matchup will take place at junior welterweight. Sources say WBA President Gilberto Mendoza told ESPN that he granted Spence a special permit to fight outside the weight class. That's actually some good news. Without relinquishing his 147-pound title.
Why is that good news?
Because it means that we still might get that unicorn of a fight that we're looking for.
You think, all right, so I'm going to ask you what you asked me. You think this fool is going to come back down to 147
Well,
after fighting at 154 pounds?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I just think that once he gets into that camp, he makes that weight cut. He sees how his body just feels and kind of reacts at 154 pounds. He is not 7 pounds is a lot of weight, particularly when you're in your early to mid
30s.
So that's and he doesn't want to put himself at a physical disadvantage going against who I consider, pound for pound, the best fighter out there.
He got a better chance. I've always said that he had a better chance of beating Crawford at 154 pounds. Now, better don't mean he's going to win, in my opinion. He's definitely got a better chance. His chances, in my opinion, go up fighting Crawford at 154
he beat him
pounds.
at 147, 154.
Right. Says
y'all getting off the subject. We talking Thurman and Spence. Thurman.
Well, it affects. Right, you're right. Go ahead, Fuji. What or Cam, who are you going to throw that to? Because I wanted to hear what Randy was going to say about this shit first. But Fuji the guest. So.
Go ahead, Randy.
Go ahead, Fuji. I'll let you go.
Well, I don't like Thurman. Like one time I used to like Thurman, man, but I don't love
Thurman.
Yeah, but when he got them belts and started holding them and wouldn't fight anybody, and Spence was coming after him back then, he didn't want to fight because Spence was a big threat. Now he feel like he deserved these fights. I feel like the only reason Spence is fighting him is just because that's just the next best thing to do. Like, I don't think he really want to fight him. I just feel like it's the next best thing to do, and it'll be somebody that Bud didn't fight.
Yeah, but I mean, with that said, I also think that,
and I think he's gonna stop him in 8.
Yeah, and let's just call a spade a spade. Thurman is not as good as Crawford. Doesn't pose that much of a challenge, and we're not. And this is a pay-per-view fight, and right. So I mean, we're not hearing any of this. Are you gonna take this side, or who's A and B, and doing all this other stuff? Because I think that this is just a fight that Spence is more readily to accept because he sees a clear path to victory. So what say you, the casual one?
No. I just agree with all the shit you just said. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this fight is going on because Bud stepped out and didn't want to fight him in December in January. So this is the ramification. There was a reason that Thurman was always lurking around number 1 or number 2 in the WBC.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, so it's a reason. So they always was they always had that shot. I think the plan was originally Spence go ahead and knock off Bud, get the unification, and then bounce to 154. And then all of them, Thurman, Boots, Ortiz, all them, that generation, well, the younger generation, and then add Thurman, fight for 147 again. But after Bud pulled his magic trick and pulled out, it left the scatter, and then it wasn't the fact that Spence didn't want to fight Boots, Spence didn't want to do this. He was just left with no dance partner, and then I think
now Spence had a dance partner. That's not true. He had a dance partner. He had Stanionis. He always had Stanionis. Stanionis been his mandatory for like 18 months or some shit.
I mean, all right, yeah, okay, he had Stanionis, but which one was going, if you going to fight for the most money, who was going to give you more money, Thurman or Stanionis?
Was it on pay-per-view or it's not on pay-per-view?
Period. Well, Spence is at a level where he's not going to not fight on regular TV.
Yeah, I don't know how much more money he gets for knocking off an irrelevant Thurman.
I think he get way more money for fighting Thurman than fighting Stanionis.
I don't know what way more money is, so I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think there's more interest of a Spence Thurman fight than a Spence Stanionis.
That's all there is. There's more interest, and we don't really know how much, because we don't know how much money any of these motherfuckers is making.
Okay. Yeah, right? We can say interest. Interest. So now,
but my question is, why is this? I have my own answer to this. This to me feels like Spence flexing on Thurman because he didn't want to fight him, and Thurman wouldn't give him a title shot, and blue who. So he's saying, "Well, fuck this nigga. We gonna fight. If I gotta fight you, we gonna fight at 154, and it ain't gonna be for no belts."
Right, damn right. I mean,
that's a flex, but that's pretty much saying that fuck it, man. I don't know, because then you talking business side, and on the business side, if you go to 154, you ain't coming back down to 147. You might as well relinquish all them belts, and then what are you going to do? You going to challenge? You going to step the mail?
Do nothing. You gonna be in there fighting Tony Harrison's and them motherfuckers, and he might lose to one of them guys. A guy like he been fighting dudes smaller than him his whole career.
That's a lot. Brooke was bigger.
You said who?
Brooke.
Kell Brook is not that much bigger than no goddamn Errol Spence.
Brooke, and during that fight, he was way bigger than Errol Spence.
What were they on the scales?
Shit. I'm talking.
We have no idea. So it's your old ass eyes.
Brooke went up to fight 154 when he fought Triple G, right? The very next fight, he was back at 147. He was bigger.
Right. You don't think Errol Spence could have been fighting guys at 154 years ago? He's been complaining about making the weight now for a while.
Yes.
If Brooke is bigger, Randy, he ain't that much bigger than Errol Spence.
I'm not sure if he's bigger than him.
He ain't that much bigger than Spence, like how Spence is a lot bigger than Mikey Garcia or Sean Porter.
Bud was bigger than Gamboa. So,
right. Okay. Fine. You could fine.
Cool. He always be doing it.
Cool. That's cool. But the point is still, my point is Errol has been fighting dudes a lot bigger than him for most of his career. He's never moved up.
Yeah,
right?
like
Bud has demonstrated his skills across
like a Mikey Garcia, right? So
right. Now, if he goes up to 154,
but them people who wanted to fight him.
You said what, Fuji?
Mikey came up to fight him. Like that was, he challenged him. Don't throw Mikey in there. Like
no. I understand that.
The point he went after.
I understand that. The point I'm trying to make is now that natural size advantage that he's enjoyed his whole career is gone because guys like Tony Harrison and who else we got on here? Charles Conwell. And I've never seen the kid match well. Tim Zoo's a big joker. I'm not saying he's a better boxer than Errol Spence, but he's a big dude. But you're gonna have to box his way out of a lot of these fights.
You know who else did that?
But no belts.
And had a pretty good career?
You said who?
You know who else did that and had a pretty much good career?
Did what?
Smaller dudes and then start fighting the same size dude and bigger dudes?
Who are you thinking of?
Canelo.
Yeah, well, you know what I think of Canelo. I don't know why you bring. I don't know why you bring that up.
The first 3 quarters of his career, he was weight bullying all those fighters.
Oh, absolutely, there's no question about that. So you throwing Spence in the same category that you throw Canelo in now?
No, I'm saying Canelo had a great career after that. So I'm saying, hey,
but Canelo had big names. Canelo had names like Mosley and Cotto and Khan. Okay, say what you want about when he took those fights.
Yeah, you can't yell Khan.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that Khan was just as much of a name as Brooke. Khan is just as much of a name as anybody on Errol Spence's resume.
Now you just saying generational fighters because those names ain't who's the equivalent of those guys now. In 150, 147, 154.
He ain't got him. And that's my point. So you can make the Canelo comparison if you want. At the end of the day, Canelo was fighting for 5 times as much money as Errol Spence is fighting for to fight against guys who are going into the Hall of Fame. Maybe not Khan, right? Guys like, well, maybe sure. Khan sneakily has a good resume. So I don't
think he'll sneak it to the Hall of Fame.
It'd be one thing if Errol was fighting. If Errol had like a Pacquiao fight, for example, because that was the guy, right? That's the fight they wanted to make.
So should he dig Pacquiao up right now and go?
Well, he might not have to. Pacquiao might dig himself out. He came out and said he'd be interested in fighting again.
But Spence, when it went old school, he was like, "Yo, when who beat Larry Holmes beat the hell out of Muhammad Ali. Everybody hated Holmes." For the rest of his career. So he was like, man, I'm not going to beat the shit out of him.
I don't think Spence would have to worry about that. Not with his that slavish fan base, his acolytes of dudes he's got running around. But yeah, I just don't understand this move. Like, you go up there and there's nobody up there. Your stablemate has got all the belts. Your stablemate, who last week said he could see himself staying at 154 pounds for his whole career. I mean, look at these names at 154 pounds. I mean, there's a.
Well, I mean, at one point, right? You claimed that was the best division in boxing.
It was, but that was a while ago. That the division has destroyed itself.
Charlo cleaned it out pretty good.
But not just Charlo. I mean, these guys were all fighting each other. I mean, Gachet fought everybody in the division pretty much. Lubin fought a bunch of guys. J-Rock fought a bunch of guys. They all the division kind of ate itself alive. Don't forget, even back in the Jared Hurd and Islandi Lara days, I mean, these guys were all fighting each other. And now they don't beat the division has ate itself alive. So now all you're left with is Fondura, who is the WBC regular, a guy in Tim Zhu, and Michelle Soro, Jack Kolkai, Israel Madrimov, Bakram Murtazaliev. Like, what is Spence gonna do?
Coach Dave's favorite fighter, Xander.
Yeah, Xander. That fight is years away for Xander, especially after that last performance.
I'm just saying,
so it's like, what do you do? The biggest fights for Spence are still at 147 pounds. The most money to be made for PBC and Showtime or wherever they end up after all this is still at 147 pounds. So you better tell that little nigga, hey, you want to do this? You want to throw this? This is your little flex? I don't have a choice right now because I need to make a fight. But you gonna get your little ass back down to 147 pounds by hook or by crook. Even if we gotta suspend those drug tests. Even if we gotta do that, because there ain't no money for us. There's no money for us at 154 pounds. Not fighting Charles Conwell and them niggas.
Well, unless he fights Charlo, he hasn't.
There ain't no money in that fight neither. Charlo can't even get undisputed fights in his hometown. They got him fighting out in Central California for undisputed. All the names are at 147 pounds. There's still an Ortiz.
There's no money in a Charlo Spence fight.
Not the same kind of money that there is in a Virgil Ortiz fight in Texas. Nowhere near that money. Go ahead, Fuji.
A Charlo Spence fight wouldn't happen right now, though. Nowhere near.
Right, and that's the other thing. Thank you, Fuji. That fight is a ways out.
But yeah, but he's saying that you know, and this is from Spence itself. He said that he hasn't said that he wouldn't fight anybody. So that's a fight that he would consider. At least in theory, it'll be hard to logistically have that fight come about because they share the same camp, and you know who would have to give up their trainer, in that sense. But with that said, I think that we are at the end of another banging show. It's a bit of a slow weekend. So we don't have any pundit picks that we have for this time, but we will have them for next week. We got some pretty good fights that are happening across the water. I believe your man Anthony Yard and Beterbiev are getting into the ring, and a fight that hasn't got much traction here, but has some implications in England is the Chris Eubank versus Liam Smith fight.
Another potential Canelo opponent. Don't
Absolutely.
be surprised.
I mean but you know who for Chris Eubank, which I'm not mad at it. I think it's a way to kind of send him along his way, but he has been chomping at the bit to get at Triple G, and I think at this point, if anybody wants to fight him, and that's a viable opponent, particularly over in England, I could see that fight happening.
I've got it on pretty good authority that Munguia Triple G is signed, sealed, and delivered. They're just waiting to see where these other fights end up taking place. They don't want to have to compete with Ryan Tank or Errol and Keith or any of them other fights. They want to see where the kind of chips land. But that fight is signed, sealed, and delivered, from what I understand.
And then
is Munguia Triple G.
Talking about that Keith Thurman, the Thurman Spence fight, man, they banging against their own people. So
which is another interesting point.
Yeah, the Tank Garcia fight is in April, and then they talking about the Spence Thurman fight is going to be in April. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, but it's nothing wrong with it. Well, I mean, I at least give them a couple of weeks apart, but it's nothing wrong if we have a fun-filled April. That's
man. If I was Tank Garcia, I'd do that shit on Cinco de Mayo.
If you Gervonta Tank Davis, you got to beat this case here in the next 4 or 5 weeks. You got to beat this case, beat these charges before you worry about beating Ryan Garcia, because there's a good chance that he might have to sit down, even if it's for a few months.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, I'm your man. Also, just one reminder once again, make sure that you like. We need to get them subs up. But we appreciate y'all rocking with the pundits of pugilism. This is your man, Professor Nim, signing out for Fuji, your favorite fight fan, the Casual Rand.
Peace.
And Boston Jared.
Peace.
Keep it popping, y'all.